when all is said and done, you'll realize at some point that the fundamental misperception, the fundamental illusion, is the illusion of a separate, distinct, time-bound self, which comes with a lot of other immediate delusions that are related to it. One obvious one is that there are also suddenly a whole bunch of others. Another one is that if there are self and others, then there is also separation. There's also a sense of missing something, needing something, lack, moving towards something, moving away from something, trying to fill a space or fill a hole, trying to fix something. These all ultimately arise from the sense of being someone or something apart from everything else. That misperception, that delusion, that fundamental delusion is so uncomfortable and it's so incorrect is the only word I can think of at the moment. But it's so off the mark that there's some deep instinct that arises with it to close the loop on it, on the delusion, to resolve the delusion. So I could say that at the same time, or very likely at the same time as a sense of separate self appears, the feeling that there's something not right about it appears, and the feeling or instinct or intuition to do something about that, to correct the fundamental mistake, also appears, or at least the conditions for it appear. Now, none of this is obvious to an 18-month-old who's starting to experience a sense of self, of course, but the conditions are there. The seeds of all of this are there. The seeds of self-consciousness and building an internal world and social conditioning and social anxiety that comes with becoming socially aware at adolescence, the sense of needing to find the right set of conditions in life to finally make you happy or satisfied, that expresses itself in so many different ways. It expresses itself in childhood ways, in adolescent ways, in adult ways. Much of it is reinforced by the social matrix. All of that, the seeds of all of that are there. The moment we start to perceive, we start to pull back inward energetically, which correlates to a psychological process which makes us feel apart from. It sets this whole thing in motion at such a young age. It's kind of fascinating. In one sense, it's very tragic, right? Because when we perceive and believe in time, which is the only, shouldn't say the only place, it's essentially required to continue to perceive a sense of self apart or separate self. So as long as we're perceiving time, it feels so tragic that we have so much time to suffer. But the strange thing is that's backwards. It's like the suffering, which is ultimately a recognition that that misperception is a misperception. Suffering is grace. That suffering is really pointing us to the final truth or the big reveal. The time itself doesn't exist. So all of this is pointing us back to investigate that subtle self sense, that fundamental misperception of self and other, of self actually existing, or actually of anything actually existing, that there's any inherent existence in anything. All of that, all of those misperceptions, they could seem, I don't know, theoretical or conceptual or doctrinal. They're not. They're directly related to that illusion of self. So you will confront this at some point. In deep realization, this will become the central focus of the realization, whether you like it or not. unless you really avoid it, which can also happen. Avoid seeing it, avoid confronting the fundamental issue. But if you're willing to take this up and look into it, then it can be resolved. It can be dispelled. And on the other side of that, there's a whole other set of challenges in a way. But things proceed very differently when the self-structure falls or when the fundamental self-illusion is completely dispelled. The energetic knot is radically loosened, and it will untie itself naturally. There can still be conditions set up to cause selfing to occur, even when there's no self-structure, and that will feel so uncomfortable. It'll feel so strange in a way. And it's also seen that there's nothing that needs to be done about that when that occurs. But it occurs in so much clarity, and it occurs without any fundamental, conglomerating sense of self there, that it will naturally and spontaneously resolve itself. So there are cycles of, I could say contraction, but it may not feel so much like contraction. It'll be energetic restlessness is a good way to speak about this. Tension, conditions arising that can cause the tendency to try to form something apart, even though there is no way to do it anymore. There's no self that can adhere to, but you'll see the tendencies there. You'll see the conditions and then the reactions, or resistance patterns better than reactions here, that want to kind of keep that propagating even though it's not possible. That will feel really, really uncomfortable, which is good. That's a huge benefit of having that self-structure drop, is any delusion at this point, any tendency toward delusion or misperception is so uncomfortable physically, energetically, that it will resolve itself. So that's the background, or the overall context of what I want to speak about. What I want to speak about is how to go after this sense of fundamental sense of self that seems to be floating around. Typically at this point, the non-dual realization is clear, and that means it's clear that clarity is primary, clarity is baseline. It's not a background, it's just that it's the baseline experience, or I should say the baseline reality. And experience could obscure that periodically, but experience itself is just a fluctuating set of conditions. But the simple truth of clarity is here all the time. The other part to this would be the clear seeing in the lack of any inherent existence to anything. And I could call that formlessness. That's seen both with the self and other, even when the self structure is still, or the self filter, I should say, is still operating periodically. It can still be very clear that there is no actual physical body. There's no physical body. There aren't physical objects. There are conglomerate experiences, sets of experiences that appear to create something solid, or appear to portray something solid, something real, and it's seen with non-dual realization that none of that's actually happening, never has been, never could be. So again, the fundamental truth of non-dual is clear, meaning not two, not one, not two, not three, not 10, not 10,000, not formed, not coming into being, and thus not leaving being, not being born, not dying, not forming and not being disformed. This fundamental truth is essentially what non-dual realization is about. And all of that can be clear, and still there can be this subtle self-sense floating around. And it will kind of stick out at this point like a sore thumb. This is also why it's really important to go through these sort of stages generally, so that the other illusions have settled, right? The illusions that seem like they cause all this reactivity, the illusions that seem like they cause desire, and the illusions that seem like they cause seeking, and the illusions that seem like they cause aversion, and the illusions that seem like that divides the world up into separate objects, and then the illusion that makes it seem as if there can be anything physically real at all. Without all of those illusions there, then the fundamental illusion becomes much more clear, right? It's like I said, it sticks out like a sore thumb. You'll know when it's sort of operating and when it's sort of not. It may feel like it's completely there and completely not there. It may feel like it's just subtly in the background sometimes or most of the time, but it tends to wax and wane if anything. So just noticing that is helpful. Just recognizing that, yeah, that seems to be occurring. Now, things get so subtle here because there's not really even an instrument of perception to look with. There's not an instrument of solidification to direct from toward any object of perception anymore, if that makes sense. So it's more like an instinctual exploration. It's very much about approaching this from a place of spontaneity, clarity, from the non-dual realization itself, from the non-dual clarity. The formlessness itself is I could say, like the basis of exploration for this last filter. I could also say spontaneity now is the underlying mechanism of inquiry. It's the underlying mechanism of deepening of realization and clarity rather than intention, rather than doctrine or process or practice. There's no specific practice for this, really. And you have to have light hands here because it's easy to reify the self looking for the self. Very easy. So it's more just like curiosity and spontaneity. Instead of directing anything here, with curiosity and spontaneity as primary, in a sense, I could say direction will naturally be attention will naturally be directed, to what is not quite right, what still feels a little too heavy, what feels like it wants to form a center, what feels like it wants to cling or push, what feels like it wants to be something or someone. That will be naturally noticed here. And so that's a good thing. So all of the typical practices that we do that are sort of adjunctive practices to the primary inquiries of awakening and insight inquiries, like meditation, mindfulness, relaxation, somatic modalities, all of those come into play here. Give yourself the gift now. I mean, you're not seeking anymore, probably, right? So there's a lot of energy freed up. The energy that was stuck in the head hopefully is freed up by now, and the body can utilize and experience energy with such a wide bandwidth now. So just relax into that, right? Relax into life. Give yourself space to just relax. Let the unbinding endlessly flow inward, outward, in every direction, right? From here, this inquiry becomes joyful. The inquiry into what is that self? What is that, right? Because there's a kind of love affair with it, because not only is the sense of the separate self the fundamental illusion and it was the cause of suffering, it's also the impetus, as I mentioned earlier, because as soon as it comes into being, the impetus to clarify, see through, see all as it actually is, also came into being. So there's a beautiful non-dualistic truth about this as well, that the self is also no self. The curiosity is also absolute, complete stillness. The tendency to search for a center is also empty clarity itself. So when we see this non-dualistic truth of the transient nature and the luminous nature of anything appearing in any sense field, we see that those are non-dualistic as well. This will clarify further and further and further. And it may be a kind of slow and subtle process, and that's okay. Your attention will naturally go where it's needed. And it may very well go toward that remaining sense of self, that remaining sense of separation. It's not a sense of separation so much, that remaining sense of filtering experience in some way that creates a possibility for separation. So I guess that the real upshot of what I'm saying here is that it will proceed spontaneously. It will proceed out of curiosity and love. And notice any remaining habits to look away. That's what this is more about. It's more about noticing any remaining habits that are trying to look away from this. We've been looking away from it for our whole life, right? That's what mind identification and suffering is. It's layer after layer after layer of delusion, forcing us, making sure we never really look at this. Well, now we're face to face with it anymore. We've gone through the pain, we've gone through the fear, we've gone through the existential terror, the rage, the emotion work, the shadow work, or the vast majority of it. We've gone through the challenge and difficulty of dissolving all these perceptual filters. We've gone through insight after insight and awakening after awakening. All of that's kind of behind us now. So it just becomes an exploration of love and genuine curiosity that is not directed from somewhere towards somewhere. It's not curiosity on your own behalf. It's just natural curiosity, interest, love, and so forth. When we see that, again, I know I'm kind of saying this over and over, but I'm trying to get to something very subtle. When we see that and we realize that that is how this will proceed, then anything that feels like a turning away from this, even from the self, right? And even from the sense of something that shouldn't be here, that can't be here, that isn't actually here, but it feels like it's here, a sense of contraction, a sense of heaviness, a sense of anything, dullness, tension, suffering, struggle, any of it. Anything that feels like it's turning away from that now will feel foreign because our attention will want to go right into it now, right? Again, we've removed the fear barriers, we've removed the perceptual barriers, removed all that. Now it's time to go directly in. So it's just about in, and let the curiosity, love, and spontaneity direct what that in actually points to at any given moment. And just keep going. Let it just go. It goes on its own. So yeah, just be a little alert for anything that's trying to turn you back away from that. Habits, getting a little lost in the mind about something, some misperception, some little bit of pain or something that you're not fully conscious of. The beautiful thing about this space is once you become fully conscious of anything, it won't be a problem anymore for you. You won't be afraid of it anymore, right? You've gone through the psychological fear. It's just a matter of clarity, 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 in. So it's a beautiful time, and be patient. It will settle itself.